The galaxy had a rule: Deathworld species did not last forever. Their planets were too dangerous, their people were too strong. Their history was filled with wars, disasters, and impossible struggles. Most civilizations believed that Deathworlders were born only to fight and eventually disappear. Commander Vexa had heard those words her entire life. She hated them. But after 20 years, she could no longer argue with the facts. She stood quietly on the observation deck of the patrol ship Silver Horizon, staring at the stars beyond the glass. The dark space outside seemed endless, cold, silent, empty, much like the feeling she carried inside. According to every official record in the galaxy, her species was gone, extinct. Their homeworld had been destroyed during a terrible conflict many years ago. Millions had died, cities had burned, and the survivors had vanished without a trace. Vexa was believed to be the last one left, the last daughter of a forgotten Deathworld. The title followed her everywhere. Some people respected her, others pitied her. She liked neither. A soft beep interrupted her thoughts. "Commander, we are approaching the station," said a voice through her communicator. Vexa touched the device on her wrist. "Understood." She turned away from the stars and headed toward the command bridge. The crew was already waiting when she arrived. A giant image of an old space station floated above the central table. The station looked ancient. Its metal surface was covered with scars from countless years, drifting near the edge of explored space. Lieutenant Karan pointed at the image. "No activity detected for over 300 years. Then why are we here?" Several officers exchanged nervous looks. That alone was strange. A station abandoned for centuries should not be sending signals. Vexa crossed her arms. "Any signs of pirates?" "No, Commander. Smugglers?" "No. Unknown vessels?" "Yes." The room became quiet. Vexa stepped closer. "Explain." Karan pressed a button. A second image appeared. It showed a ship floating near the station. The vessel looked unlike anything in the Galactic database. Its design was simple but powerful, old but somehow intimidating. Vexa studied it carefully. "What species built it?" Karan swallowed. "That's the strange part." He enlarged a section of the image. The computer found a partial match in restricted archives. Vexa narrowed her eyes. "And?" "The ship may belong to an extinct species." Several crew members shifted uncomfortably. Vexa remained calm. "Which species?" Karan looked directly at her. "Humans." Silence filled the bridge. For a moment nobody spoke. Humans were little more than myths. Ancient stories told of a Deathworld civilization from a distant sector. A species known for surviving impossible conditions. Then they vanished from history. Most scholars believed they had died thousands of years ago. Vexa shook her head. "That is impossible." "I know, Commander," said Karan. "But the archive match is 92% certain." Before Vexa could respond, another alarm sounded. A communications officer suddenly stood up. "We're receiving a transmission." Every head turned toward him. "Source?" asked Vexa. "The unknown ship." The room grew tense. Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. The officer looked at his screen with wide eyes. "The signal is live." Vexa took a slow breath. "Put it through." Static filled the bridge. The sound crackled through the speakers. For several seconds there was nothing else. Then a calm voice appeared. A voice no one recognized. "Requesting docking permission." The bridge froze. The translator system worked rapidly. Unknown language patterns flashed across the screens. Then a result appeared. Species identification. Humans. Several crew members stared in disbelief. One officer nearly dropped his tablet. Vexa felt her heart pounding. Humans were extinct. That was what history said. That was what everyone believed. So why was a human ship sitting outside an abandoned station? And why was a human speaking to them right now? The voice came again, requesting docking permission. This time it sounded almost friendly, as if the speaker had no idea he was causing panic. Karan looked at Vexa. "What are your orders, Commander?" Vexa stared at the display. Questions raced through her mind. Was it a trap? A pirate trick? An ancient machine pretending to be alive? Or something far more shocking? Slowly she made her decision. "Grant docking permission." Several officers looked surprised. "Commander?" The docking control officer entered the command. A green light appeared on the screen. Permission granted. Far outside the ship, giant docking doors slowly opened. The unknown vessel began moving forward. Nobody on the bridge spoke. Every eye remained fixed on the monitor. Minutes later, the docking sequence was complete. The mysterious ship settled into the station's airlock. A security officer received an update. Airlock pressurization confirmed. Another officer swallowed nervously. Something is coming through. The camera feed switched to the station corridor. A long hallway appeared on the screen. Cold lights flickered above metal walls. For several seconds nothing happened. Then a shadow appeared. Footsteps echoed through the corridor. Slow, steady, confident. The figure moved closer. Vexa leaned forward. Her pulse quickened. The entire bridge watched in complete silence. At last, the stranger stepped into the light. And for the first time in centuries, a human stood before the galaxy once again. The bridge remained completely silent. Nobody moved. Nobody even seemed to breathe on the main screen. The figure stood beneath the flickering station lights. He did not look like a monster. He did not look like a conqueror. And he certainly did not look like a species that history claimed had vanished thousands of years ago. He looked surprisingly ordinary. His face showed signs of age and experience. But what caught everyone's attention was his expression. He was smiling, not a nervous smile, not a forced smile, a calm and genuine smile. Commander Vexa stared at the screen. The impossible was standing right in front of her, a living human. The communications officer finally broke the silence. Commander, what do we do now? Vexa never took her eyes off the screen. We meet him. Several officers immediately protested. Commander, that could be dangerous. We know nothing about him. He could be armed. Vexa crossed her arms. He is alone. That doesn't mean he isn't dangerous, Karan replied. The commander looked back at the screen. The human simply stood there waiting patiently, almost amused by the delay. Finally Vexa nodded. Prepare a security team, but nobody fires unless I give the order. Minutes later, every weapon was pointed toward the airlock entrance. The heavy door slowly opened. A low mechanical sound echoed through the chamber. Then he smiled again. Well, he said, that's one way to say hello. A few guards exchanged confused looks. His voice carried no fear, no panic, no anger. It was as if he had expected this reaction. Commander Vexa stepped forward. For the first time, the two stood face to face. The human was slightly taller than her. His eyes carefully studied the room before returning to her. Something about those eyes felt strange. They carried experience. The kind earned only through years of survival. The kind she recognized from her own people. The human extended one hand. Several guards instantly raised their weapons higher. The stranger looked surprised. What? He asked. Nobody answered. Vexa glanced at the hand. What are you doing? The human blinked. A handshake. The room remained silent. A what? Asked one guard. The human chuckled softly. A greeting. Vexa had never heard of such a custom. Slowly, she reached forward. Their hands met. The moment lasted only seconds, yet something about it felt important. Neither knew exactly why. The human smiled. Nice to finally meet another Deathworld survivor. The room froze. Vexa immediately pulled her hand back. Her eyes narrowed. What did you just say? The human's smile faded slightly. Another Deathworld survivor. The commander's voice became cold. You know what I am? Of course. How? The human looked genuinely confused. Because your species is famous. Vexa stared at him. Her species had not been famous for centuries. Most people barely remembered they had existed. That's impossible, she said. The human tilted his head. Impossible? Everyone knows my people are extinct. The stranger was silent for several seconds. Then he laughed, not a mocking laugh, a surprised laugh. The kind someone makes after hearing something ridiculous. Oh, he said, shaking his head. So that's the story they're telling now. The guards looked at each other nervously. Vexa took another step forward. What do you mean? The human's expression changed. The humor disappeared. Now he looked serious. "Commander, how much do you really know about what happened to your people?" The question struck harder than she expected, because the truth was simple: not much. Most records had been destroyed. Most witnesses were gone. The official story was all anyone had left. The human noticed her hesitation. His eyes narrowed. "Interesting. What is?" "You don't know." "Know what?" The human looked around the chamber, making sure everyone was listening. Then he spoke quietly. "My name is Ethan Ward." Nobody recognized it, but he continued anyway. "And your species didn't disappear the way history claims." The room instantly erupted with whispers. Several guards looked shocked. Others looked angry. Vexa felt her pulse quicken. "Explain." Ethan remained calm. "Not here." "Why not?" "Because if what I suspect is true, someone may already know I found you." The chamber became silent once more. Vexa's instincts immediately reacted. This was no longer just a strange encounter. Something bigger was happening. Something hidden. Something dangerous. Before she could ask another question, a technician rushed into the room. "Commander." Vexa turned. "What is it?" The technician looked terrified. "We just detected a data breach." The commander's eyes widened. "What?" "Someone accessed the station archives seconds after the human arrived." Ethan's face immediately became serious. "How long ago?" "Less than a minute." The human muttered something under his breath. Ethan held her gaze. "Because the people who buried the truth have just learned that I'm here." And somewhere deep inside the ancient station, a hidden system suddenly activated after centuries of silence. A warning siren suddenly echoed through the ancient station. Red lights flashed across the walls. The calm atmosphere disappeared instantly. Crew members rushed toward their stations. Security officers raised their weapons. Commander Vexa's eyes locked onto Ethan. What just happened? Ethan was already looking toward one of the station corridors. His expression had become serious. "The station woke up," Vexa frowned. "Woke up?" "This place was never abandoned," Ethan said. "It was sleeping." Before anyone could respond, another alarm sounded. A technician's voice came through the communicator. "Commander, multiple systems are activating across the station." "Show me." A holographic map appeared above the control table. Entire sections of the station were lighting up one by one. Areas that had shown no power for centuries were suddenly alive. The technician looked terrified. "It's accessing old archives. Can you stop it?" Vexa asked. "No, Commander. Why not?" "Because the commands aren't coming from outside." The room fell silent. Artificial and strangely calm. Identity confirmed. Everyone froze. The voice continued. Human genetic profile recognized. Several crew members stared at Ethan. The artificial voice spoke again. "Protocol 7 activated." Ethan closed his eyes, almost as if he had expected this. Vexa immediately noticed. "You know what Protocol 7 is?" The human slowly nodded. "Not exactly." "Then tell me what you do know." Ethan took a deep breath. "Long ago, humans built hidden stations across the galaxy." The room became quiet. "Why?" Vexa asked. "Insurance." "Against what?" His answer came immediately. "Against extinction." Nobody laughed. Nobody even smiled. The word felt too serious, too familiar. Vexa crossed her arms. "You're saying humans expected something bad to happen?" Ethan looked directly at her. "We didn't expect it." 53 ships, each one larger than anything Commander Vexa had ever faced. The red symbols kept moving closer, steady, confident. As if they knew nobody could stop them, Vexa looked at Ethan. "Who are they?" The human did not answer immediately. His eyes remained fixed on the screen, almost like he was seeing a ghost. Finally he spoke. "They call themselves the Custodians." Nobody recognized the name, but the fear in Ethan's voice made everyone listen. Lieutenant Karan frowned. "I've never heard of them." "You weren't supposed to," Ethan replied. Vexa crossed her arms. "Start explaining." The human took a deep breath. "Thousands of years ago, before humans disappeared from public records, a powerful group formed inside the Galactic Alliance." "The same people from the recording?" The Vexa asked. Ethan nodded. "They believed Deathworld species would eventually become too powerful. The room listened carefully. They looked at humanity, your people, and dozens of other Deathworld races and saw a threat. A threat to what? Karan asked. Their control. Silence filled the bridge. Ethan continued. They couldn't defeat every Deathworld civilization openly, so they used fear instead. Fear? Vexa asked. They convinced the galaxy that Deathworld species were dangerous, unstable, and impossible to trust. The commander felt anger rising inside her, because she had heard those exact words many times in her life, words repeated by politicians, scholars, military officers, words everyone accepted as facts. Ethan pointed toward the incoming fleet. When the purge began, many species disappeared. Officially, they were victims of wars, disasters, or economic collapse, but that wasn't the truth. The bridge became very quiet. What happened to them? Vexa asked softly. Ethan looked at her. They were hunted. Nobody spoke. Even the ship's engines seemed silent. Vexa suddenly remembered every story she had heard about her people's final days. The missing records, the missing witnesses, the unanswered questions. For years she believed history had simply been lost. Now she wondered if someone had erased it. A communications officer suddenly interrupted. Commander, incoming transmission. Everyone turned. Source? Vexa asked. The lead warship. Ethan immediately tensed. His jaw tightened. Don't answer it. Vexa looked at him. Why? Because they already know we're here. The transmission signal continued flashing, again and again, patient, persistent, like a predator knocking on a door. Finally Vexa nodded. Put it through. The bridge lights dimmed slightly. A holographic image appeared above the command table. The figure was tall, elderly, and dressed in a dark uniform covered with silver markings. His face showed no emotion. His eyes looked cold, calculating. The stranger calmly studied the room. Then his gaze settled on Ethan. For several seconds, neither man spoke. The silence itself felt dangerous. Finally, the older man smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Mr. Ward, he said. Ethan's face hardened. Director Solon. The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. The two clearly knew each other. You've caused quite a lot of trouble. Ethan laughed softly. Truth usually does. The smile vanished from Solon's face. His voice became colder. You were warned. And you were exposed, Ethan replied, for the first time. Anger flashed across the director's eyes. Vexa stepped forward. Who are you? The older man finally looked at her. His expression changed slightly, almost like he was studying a rare object. So, he said quietly, the survivor still lives. Vexa immediately disliked him. You know who I am? Of course, Commander Vexa. The way he said her name made her skin crawl, not because he sounded surprised, because he sounded familiar, as if he had known about her for years. The realization hit her instantly. You've been watching me, the director smiled again. We watch many things. Ethan stepped forward. Leave her out of this. Solon ignored him. Instead he looked directly at Vexa. Commander, you have spent your entire life searching for answers. The bridge became silent. Answers about your people. Answers about your world. Answers about why history never made sense. Vexa felt her heart beating faster. Because every word was true. The director's voice became almost gentle. And now this human arrives and fills your mind with stories. Ethan clenched his fists. Stories? Ask yourself one question. The room listened carefully. If humanity survived all these centuries, why did they never return? Vexa looked toward Ethan. For the first time since meeting him, she did not have an answer. The director noticed and smiled. Then he delivered the next blow. Perhaps because humanity was never protecting anyone. The bridge grew silent. Perhaps humanity was hiding. Ethan's expression darkened. That's enough. But Solon wasn't finished. He looked directly into Vexa's eyes. And perhaps the extinction of your people was not the tragedy you believe it was. The commander felt anger explode inside her. Before she could respond, every alarm on the bridge activated at once. The tactical display flashed red. A terrified officer jumped to his feet. Commander! What now? The officer looked pale. One of the enemy ships just launched something. Vexa frowned. A missile? The officer shook his head. No, the room waited. What is it? The officer swallowed hard, his voice barely above a whisper. It's a beacon. Ethan's face instantly lost all color. Vexa turned toward him. What does that mean? The human stared at the screen in horror, then spoke the words nobody wanted to hear. It means this fleet wasn't a real threat. Outside the station, somewhere beyond the edge of the system, a far larger force had just received their location, and it was already moving toward them. The bridge of the Silver Horizon fell into stunned silence. Nobody spoke after Ethan's warning. Every eye remained fixed on the tactical display. Commander Vexa looked at Ethan. You said this fleet isn't the real threat. Ethan nodded. His face was grim. The custodians never travel alone. Then who are they calling? Lieutenant Karan asked. For a moment, Ethan said nothing. Then he answered, the people above them. A chill moved through the bridge. Even Director Solin's image remained silent, as if he already knew what was coming. Vexa narrowed her eyes. You mean there is someone controlling the custodians? Ethan looked toward the stars outside. Not someone. Something bigger. Before Vexa could press him further, a new alarm erupted across the bridge. A communications officer nearly jumped from his chair. Commander, we're receiving encrypted transmissions from inside the station. Vexa frowned. From where? The officer's eyes widened. It already decoded itself. Priority message recognized. Everyone froze. The voice continued. Emergency protocol inherited from Archive Station 12. The human stared at the screen, his eyes filled with disbelief. It's an archive intelligence. The artificial voice spoke again. Human survivor Ethan Ward confirmed. Deathworld survivor Commander Vexa confirmed. Executing final directive. The bridge lights flickered. Then a hidden section of the station map suddenly appeared. An entire area nobody had known existed. Lieutenant Karan looked shocked. That's impossible. The station blueprint expanded, revealing a massive chamber buried deep inside the structure. Vexa stepped closer. What is that place? Vault remains secure after 2,312 years. Every person on the bridge stared at the display. Vexa looked at Ethan. What is inside the vault? The human hesitated, almost afraid to answer. Finally he spoke. Hope. Nobody understood. But before anyone could ask another question, Director Solin laughed. The sound echoed across the bridge. You found it. Ethan turned sharply toward the hologram. You knew? Of course I knew, Solin replied. We've searched for it for centuries. Vexa looked between them. Someone tell me what is happening, the director smiled. The preservation vault contains records. Ethan shook his head. Not just records. The human looked directly at Vexa. It contains names. The commander frowned. Names? The names and locations of every surviving Deathworld colony that escaped the purge. The bridge exploded into whispers. Several officers gasped. Others stared in disbelief. Vexa felt her heart stop for a moment. Surviving colonies? Not extinct? Alive? The possibility felt impossible, yet Ethan's expression showed no sign of doubt. The AI confirmed it seconds later. Vault contains preservation data for 37 protected species. The room became silent. 37, not one, not two. 37, entire civilizations hidden from history. Entire peoples believed dead. Vexa struggled to find words. My people? The eye answered instantly. Species designation confirmed. The commander's knees almost gave way. For 20 years she had believed she was alone. Now a machine was telling her that others might still exist. Somewhere among the stars, alive, waiting. The director's smile disappeared. His voice became sharp. Open the vault immediately. The AI responded without hesitation. Request denied. Solin's face darkened. Override authorization Solin Prime. Request denied. For the first time, the powerful director looked frustrated. The AI remained calm. Vault access restricted to verified Deathworld survivors. This isn't over. Ethan crossed his arms. No, it isn't. Suddenly another officer shouted from across the bridge. Commander! Vexa turned. What now? The officer pointed toward the long-range sensors. His face had gone completely pale. The commander looked at the display. Red warning symbols flooded the screen. The tactical computer struggled to count them. Karan stared in horror. "That's impossible." The sensor officer swallowed hard. The beacon worked. Outside the system, a gigantic armada was emerging from hyperspace, ship after ship after ship, enough vessels to darken the stars themselves. Vexa looked at Ethan. "What are they?" The human's voice was quiet, almost defeated. "The people who built the Purge." Nobody spoke. The armada kept growing. 300 ships, 500, 700. The numbers climbed higher every second. Then the AI spoke once more. Its calm voice somehow making the situation even more terrifying. Threat assessment updated. The bridge waited. Probability of survival, 2%. Silence, absolute silence. Then another message appeared on the main screen. Not from the enemy, not from the station, but from inside the vault itself. A single line of ancient text glowing in bright gold letters. The AI read it aloud. "If the darkness returns, send the signal." Ethan stared at the words, then suddenly understood. His eyes widened. A spark of hope appearing for the first time. Vexa noticed immediately. "What is it?" The human looked at her, then at the growing enemy armada, and finally back at the message. A slow smile appeared on his face. The Purge wasn't the only thing hidden all those years. The commander felt her pulse quicken. What else was hidden? Ethan's answer sent a wave of anticipation through everyone on the bridge. The survivors built something of their own. Outside the station, hundreds of enemy warships advanced through the darkness. But somewhere far beyond known space, a forgotten signal was about to wake allies the galaxy had believed dead for thousands of years. The enemy armada filled the stars. Every screen on the silver horizon glowed red with warning symbols. Warships stretched across space in every direction. No one on her bridge had. The tactical computer continued counting. 800 ships, 900, then more. The numbers seemed endless. For the first time in many years, Vexa wondered if this was truly the end, not only for her, but for every hidden survivor still living somewhere in the galaxy. Director Solin's hologram stood calmly among the chaos. Unlike everyone else, he seemed completely relaxed, almost pleased. "You see the problem now," he said. His cold eyes moved toward Ethan. "You were supposed to stay hidden." Ethan folded his arms. "And you were supposed to keep your lies buried forever." Solin smiled. "History remembers winners." Ethan shook his head. "No. History remembers survivors." The bridge became silent. The words struck harder than any weapon. For thousands of years the galaxy had believed entire civilizations were gone. Yet somehow they had survived, hidden, waiting, enduring. The AI voice suddenly returned. "Final directive available." Every head turned toward the nearest screen. A golden symbol appeared. The same symbol from the ancient message. Vexa stepped closer. "What is the final directive?" The AI answered immediately. "Emergency awakening protocol." Ethan's eyes widened. His heart began racing. "No way," the AI continued. "Authorization requires one human survivor and one Deathworld survivor." The room fell silent. Everyone slowly looked toward Ethan and Vexa. The realization hit at the same moment. The station had not activated by accident. It had been waiting specifically for them. Thousands of years, waiting. For this exact moment, Vexa looked at the human. "You knew about this?" Ethan shook his head. "Not this part." The commander turned toward the screen. "What happens if we activate it?" The eye paused, then answered. "Signal will be transmitted to all preserved colonies." Nobody moved. Nobody spoke. Then Karan finally broke the silence. "You mean every surviving Deathworld civilization will receive it?" "Confirmed." The lieutenant looked stunned. "How many are there?" The eye replied, "Unknown." The answer somehow made everything feel bigger, much bigger. Entire worlds could still exist beyond known space. Entire fleets, entire populations. Hidden from history, waiting for a signal that never came, until now. Director Solin suddenly stepped forward. "You sound nervous." The director's eyes narrowed. "You have no idea what you are about to unleash." "Actually," Ethan replied, I think that's exactly why we're doing it. The bridge crew smiled for the first time since the Armada appeared. Even Vexa felt a spark of satisfaction. For once, Solon looked uncertain. The AI displayed 2 authorization panels, one for Ethan, one for Vexa. The human stepped forward first. Without hesitation, he placed his hand against the scanner. Human authorization confirmed. The first panel turned green. Everyone looked toward Vexa. The commander stared at the second scanner. For years she had believed she was alone, the last survivor, the final member of a dead species. Now she knew that might have been a lie, a very big lie. Slowly she raised her hand. Deathworld authorization confirmed. Every light aboard the station suddenly turned gold. The entire structure vibrated, deep beneath them. Ancient systems awakened after thousands of years of silence. The eye spoke one final time. Emergency awakening protocol activated. Then the signal launched, not as a simple transmission, but as a pulse, a powerful burst racing across the stars, through hidden routes, forgotten networks, ancient channels built long before the purge. The signal disappeared into deep space. Gone, the bridge waited. Seconds passed, nothing happened. Then 1 minute, still nothing. Director Solon smiled. You failed. The enemy armada continued advancing, weapons charging, shields forming. The situation looked hopeless. Then the long-range sensors suddenly flashed. A technician jumped from his chair. Contact! The bridge erupted into motion. Vexa spun around. Where? The officer pointed toward the edge of the star map. A single blue symbol had appeared, far beyond the system. Then another. Then another. The room watched in silence. The symbols kept appearing. 10, 20, 50, 100. More and more every second. Karan stared at the display. His voice barely worked. They're answering. The blue symbols multiplied rapidly. Entire formations appeared from nowhere. Massive fleets emerging from hidden hyperspace routes. Ships unlike anything in modern records. Some carried human markings, others belonged to species long believed extinct. Every new arrival pushed back the darkness on the map. The bridge crew could hardly believe what they were seeing. Vexa felt tears forming in her eyes, not from fear, from hope. For the first time in decades, hope. The sensor officer suddenly laughed, a nervous, shocked laugh. Commander, you need to see this. The main screen zoomed toward one of the incoming fleets. A symbol appeared on its lead ship. An ancient symbol, one Vexa recognized immediately. Her breath caught. It was the emblem of her homeworld, the emblem of her people, the emblem she thought she would never see again. Her voice trembled. No, the officer smiled. And heading straight toward her, across the bridge, Ethan smiled quietly. The survivors had answered, the forgotten had returned, and outside the station, as the enemy armada watched in disbelief, the dead civilizations of the galaxy began arriving from every corner of the stars, refusing once again to disappear. The stars were alive. Every direction was filled with ships. Thousands upon thousands of vessels emerged from hyperspace. Some were sleek and modern, others looked ancient, scarred by centuries of survival. But they all carried the same message. They had answered the call. Across the bridge of the silver horizon, nobody spoke. The sight was too incredible, too impossible. Commander Vexa stared at the fleet bearing the emblem of her people. Her hands trembled slightly, not from fear, from disbelief. For 20 years, she had carried the title of the last survivor. For 20 years she had believed her civilization was gone. Now hundreds of ships carrying her world symbol filled the stars. She was not alone. She had never been alone. The truth had simply been hidden. A voice suddenly came through the communication system. Unidentified command vessel requesting contact. Vexa's heart skipped. Open the channel. The screen flickered. A woman appeared. Her silver uniform carried the same emblem Vexa had seen as a child. The emblem of home. For several seconds neither woman spoke. They simply stared at one another. The officer on the screen smiled softly. Then spoke words Vexa never expected to hear again. In the name of the free survivors, welcome home, Commander. The bridge fell silent. Vexa felt tears forming in her eyes. The officer continued. My name is Admiral Serana. We have searched for you for many years. Vexa struggled to find her voice. You knew I was alive? Serana nodded. We lost contact after the purge. We believed you were gone. A small laugh escaped Vexa. That makes two of us. Several crew members smiled. Even after everything, the simple joke eased the tension. But the moment did not last. A warning alarm echoed through the bridge. The enemy armada was moving. Director Solin's hologram remained active. His face had become pale. The confidence he carried earlier was gone. He stared at the growing Alliance fleet in disbelief. No, he whispered. It isn't possible. Ethan stepped forward, a small smile appearing on his face. You spent thousands of years trying to erase them. And they survived anyway. Solin's expression hardened. The final battle was about to begin. The bridge erupted into activity. Commands echoed across every deck. Fleet formations shifted. Defensive lines formed. Admiral Serana's voice returned. All survivor fleets, prepare for engagement. Across the stars, thousands of ships moved as one. Humans, Deathworlders, species erased from history. All standing together. For the first time in thousands of years, the hunted were no longer running. They were fighting back. The battle began moments later. Energy beams crossed the darkness. Missiles streaked between fleets. Explosions lit entire sections of space. The stars themselves seemed to burn. Yet something strange happened. The Alliance was winning. Not because they had bigger ships, not because they had stronger weapons, but because they had something the enemy lacked. Unity. For centuries they had survived together in secret, protecting one another, helping one another, learning from one another. The purge had failed to destroy them. Instead it had brought them closer. Hours passed. The enemy fleet slowly collapsed. One formation after another broke apart. Ships surrendered, others retreated. Many simply stopped fighting. The truth was spreading too quickly. Every open communication channel carried the same evidence. The recordings, the archives, the hidden history. The galaxy was finally learning what had really happened. And the galaxy was angry. At the center of the battlefield, Director Solin's flagship made one final attempt to escape. But dozens of survivor vessels surrounded it. Its engines shut down. Its weapons powered off. The war was over. A cheer erupted across the bridge of the silver horizon. Crew members embraced. Others laughed. Some simply sat in stunned silence. After so much loss, so many years of lies, the nightmare was finally ending. Days later, representatives from every survivor civilization gathered aboard a massive council station. The halls were crowded with species once believed extinct. Old enemies stood beside old friends. Histories long erased were finally being restored. Commander Vexa walked through the chamber in silence. Everywhere she looked, she saw people who should not have existed. People who had survived against impossible odds. Near the center of the hall stood Ethan, watching the celebration with a quiet smile. Vexa approached him. For a moment neither spoke. Then Ethan laughed softly. Quite a week, Vexa smiled. That's one way to describe it. They stood together, looking across the crowded chamber. The human folded his arms. You know, when I first arrived at that station, I wasn't sure anyone would believe me. Vexa looked at him. I almost didn't. Ethan laughed. Fair enough. Silence settled between them. Comfortable silence. The kind shared between people who had survived something extraordinary. Finally Vexa turned toward him. There's something I've been thinking about. Ethan raised an eyebrow. What? The commander smiled. The moment everything changed. The battle? Ethan asked. She shook her head. The archives? Again she shook her head. Then what? Vexa extended her hand. The same gesture he had shown her days earlier. Ethan immediately recognized it. A smile spread across his face. The two shook hands once more. A simple gesture, nothing more, yet it had changed everything. Because that handshake had carried a truth neither of them understood at the time. The truth that no survivor stands alone forever. Sometimes all it takes is one person reaching out through the darkness, and someone else reaching back, as the celebration continued around them. Commander Vexa looked across the hall filled with living proof that history had lied. The galaxy had believed the Deathworlders were gone. The galaxy had believed humanity had vanished. The galaxy had believed the survivors would eventually disappear, but the survivors had endured. They had waited, and now they had returned together, stronger than anyone had imagined. And this time, the stars would remember them.